For those of you who don't know, a while ago I made a video on a book that was going around TikTok and YouTube, and some people described it as one of the most disturbing books ever made. So I made a video on it that wasn't received very well, and some people suggested remaking it. So that's what I'm doing. First off, let me get all the trigger warnings out of the way. This book contains mention of rape, incest, and graphic child death. The book begins with a man called Rock, and I'll just get all of the character backstory out of the way. So Rock was adopted by a woman called Gwendolyn, and she has been abusing Rock his entire life, physically and sexually. Rock is looking at mother and son. The mother, Coraline, and her son, Donnie, is on a leash, and Rock is so annoyed by this that he hands the mother a leaflet for a company called Helping Hearts. Now, I think this is actually in another book, but don't quote me on that. So does that mean that like every Aaron Beauregard book is connected? Because that would be pretty cool. So after Rock hands the leaflet to Donnie and Coraline, we get introduced to Tom and Molly. They're heading off to pick up their kids, Isaac, Sadie, and Samantha. We don't learn about them until later, but I'll just talk about them now. Sadie and Samantha are kind of assholes to Isaac, and Isaac is kind of a weak, nerdy kid with glasses, and this family is called the Grimleys. We then get introduced to the Matthews, consisting of Greg, the dad, Lacey, the mom, and the children, CJ, Bobby, who's the oldest, Kip, and Tonya. We then get to the part that you've probably heard about, and this is page 30 to 50-ish. And it starts off with Rock looking in the mirror, and Gwendolyn is on the bed, like the kind of castle house. So she lives in a castle, basically. So Rock is looking in the mirror, and Gwendolyn is on the bed, and then Gwendolyn makes Rock lick her vagina. The smell is so vile that it causes Rock to vomit. He then uses the vomit as lubricant. This causes her dentures to fly out when Rock finishes. Gwendolyn then walks into a hallway filled with dildos. While pleasuring herself, she thinks back to when she saw her mum and her dad having sex. It's said that Gwendolyn was jealous of her father. It then cuts to when Gwendolyn is a teenager and her mother is late to work and forgets to flush the toilet. Gwendolyn then uses the stuff to pleasure herself. We then cut to Gwendolyn's mother in the hospital bed. She is dying. The only thing keeping her alive is an oxygen mask. Gwendolyn sees this as her only opportunity, and so takes off her mother's oxygen mask and rapes her own mother. This causes her to die, and after the funeral, Gwendolyn decides to adopt Rock. We then cut to the Grimleys driving to the castle, but this chapter just introduces the children, and I've already done that, so let's move on to the next part, and that's just saying about how Greg is disappointed in Bobby because he likes skateboarding, and all of his other children like quote-unquote real sports, like baseball and stuff like that. He then says he's at least glad that Bobby isn't an F-slur. Also, Lacey is playing with one of Tonya's slap bracelets. When the Grimleys and the Matthews get there, they are greeted by Gwendolyn, Rock, and Fuchs. Fuchs is a former Nazi scientist hired by Gwendolyn to build the playground. Coraline and Donnie are late to the castle, so the Matthews and the Grimleys just go in without them. It then shows the children outside of the gates of the playground, and Isaac was expecting something else, so he's a bit disappointed, but Bobby sees the disappointed look on his face and feels that Isaac is ungrateful. So, you know, that pisses off Bobby a lot. Also, CJ and Tonya want to go on the Seesaw, but Sadie and Samantha are already on the Seesaw. So their parents are brought to a room where they can only see their children on CCTV and can only talk to them once on a PA system. They're all doing this, by the way, because Gwendolyn tells them if they just let their children play on some playground equipment for like 6 hours, they get $4,000. Okay, so Gwendolyn tells everyone to lay back in their chairs and get comfortable, but Lacey drops the slap bracelet and a metal clamp goes from the side of the chair through her neck to the other side of the chair, killing her and spraying blood everywhere. The other parents are trapped in their chairs so they can't do anything. We then cut to Isaac as he's being tormented by Bobby and Kip until he falls off a bit of playground equipment and hurts his balls.
Get those nuts out of my face!
Bobby and Kip start laughing at Isaac as he wallows in pain, but CJ comes in to help him to his feet. Rock is standing outside the playground gates and hears the doorbell ring. He goes to the door to see Coraline and Donnie. Donnie is on his leash yet again and falls up the stone steps. Coraline tells him to get up. This reminds Rock of Gwendolyn's abusive ways towards him. This annoys Rock so much that he punches Coraline in the face again and again and again and smashes her face against the stone step until her face is just a meaty pile of red. Donnie does not react to his mother's death and just stares blankly at Rock, but Rock still cleans Donnie up, and after a lot of thinking, he puts Donnie in the playground with the other children. Sadie quickly tries to make friends with Donnie, but he won't talk to anyone. Molly begs Gwendolyn to let them go, but obviously she doesn't, or it would be quite a short book. But she does make a deal. She will look after any girl that survives the playground, but especially Tonya. Fuchs then comes on the playground PA and tells all the children to get to the big slide at the back of the playground. The confused children look at Rock, only to see him holding 2 angry dogs. Rock then opens the playground gates and lets the dogs loose, and electrifies the fences. Everyone runs to the slide, but Isaac is too slow and gets attacked by one of the dogs, biting into his arm.
Why would he do that?
CJ distracts the other dog by climbing up a piece of playground equipment and taking off his shirt, wrapping it around the dog and pushing it off the playground equipment, snapping its neck. CJ then runs over to Isaac and throws sand in the dog that's attacking him's eye. CJ and Isaac run over to the big slide and go inside with all the other children. Rock then tells Gwendolyn that one of the dogs has died. Gwendolyn tells Rock to just put the other one down because she doesn't raise losers. Also, Greg has been screaming at Fuchs, Gwendolyn and Rock ever since his wife died. Also, for those of you who are listening to this, because I got a couple of people who commented, "Oh, I'm listening to this and not watching it," look at the screen for a minute. And sorry for the people who are watching this, guys. Don't blame me. Blame the people listening to this. Okay, so these are the Grimleys, and these are the Matthews, and these are all the other characters. In the room of the big slide, CJ is tending to Isaac's arm wound. Bobby is making Isaac panic by making him think that it's worse than it is. And just being a real arsehole, honestly. Fuck Bobby, man. CJ then gets Kip's undershirt and wraps it around Isaac's arm. Also, there are riddles for every room, but no offense, Aaron Beauregard. I'm not going to include them because we're going to find out what happens in the rooms anyway. The room starts to close in and all the children go down the big slide and into the pitch black. CJ can feel the plastic on his shirtless back, but he quickly feels a cut. Then another one. Then another one. And another one. Until he sees that the top half of the slide is covered in razor blades, and the bottom half of the slide is covered in barbed wire. CJ makes it down the slide only to see all the other children are covered in cuts, with the amounts varied. Bobby has it the worst though, looking extremely pale, but they hear the sound of machinery and see objects flying towards them. It's a bunch of baseball machines throwing baseballs at them. CJ tells everyone to get down, and after the machines stop, they hear a muffled struggling above them. There's a hangman hanging from the ceiling, and it's got a hunting knife in its hand. It's above a pillar that's surrounded by stairs, and it's all above a ball pit, and this is in the middle of the room. And at the end of the room, there's a dark hallway with a bright pink neon sign that says exit on it. Samantha gets so overwhelmed by this that she runs towards the hallway, screaming for her mum and dad. Sadie runs after her, but it's too late. As soon as Samantha got halfway through the hallway, an explosion went off, and Sadie is blasted away from the hallway. Isaac runs to them to see Samantha's leg has been blasted off. The cracked bone is showing, and she's gushing blood. CJ and Isaac try to drag her from the now collapsing hallway, but Samantha is hardly holding on to life. Sadie grabs her sister's arm, but as they do, a piece of concrete falls from the ceiling and crashes onto Samantha's head, crushing it. The arm that Sadie was holding onto has now come off. They all make it to the hallway to see the ceiling fall onto Samantha's body. Everyone is shocked and unsettled by the sight, except for Donnie, who remains emotionless. They all stand there for a second, staring at Samantha's body, until CJ decides to get the shirt from the hangman to patch up Bobby's wounds. Tonya offers to get it instead of CJ, but CJ is more athletic, so he starts to climb up. He jumps to the top step and onto the pillar, but it's a shitty jump, and CJ falls into the ball pit, only to find the balls are weak and filled with salt. The salt goes deep inside the cuts on CJ's back. CJ is in so much pain, but he pushes through and gets out of the ball pit and finally gets up to the hangman. CJ throws the hangman on the ground and Sadie runs up to it and grabs the hunting knife from its hand. Sadie takes all of her rage out on the hangman and repeatedly stabs it until fire ants start crawling out from inside the hangman. The fire ants crawl all over the children, but luckily CJ is quick enough to get the key from inside the hangman's head and also get a shirt for Bobby. CJ uses the key to get to the second room and lead the children inside. He also grabs the hunting knife and puts it in his back pocket. Molly is scream crying and Tom is devastated, but they know the only person who can stop this is Rock. Also, Gwendolyn and Fuchs are having a celebratory drink for the death of Samantha. Obviously. The children go into the second room and it's hopscotch. There are dead angel drawings with chalk on the ground and meat grinders on each side of the hopscotch, with cows in cages hanging over them. And after you finish hopscotch, there are two doors, one that says heaven and one that says hell. Before they begin, Bobby makes a comment about Samantha being stupid. This pisses off Isaac, but Tonya and CJ stop them from fighting. All the children get to the other side except Isaac, Kip and Bobby. Bobby doesn't because he's scared. Isaac decides to go and Kip goes after him. Midway through the hopscotch, Isaac decides to stop and think for a second, and one of the cows drops from the ceiling and into a meat grinder. The blood splatters onto Kip's face, causing him to fall back onto a meat grinder. Everyone looks on in horror except for Donnie, of course. Isaac and Bobby finish the hopscotch, and immediately Bobby punches Isaac in the face and makes his nose bleed. An argument ensues and Bobby calls Isaac a dandelion F-slur. That happens a couple of times in the book. Mostly Greg says it. Everyone is mad at Bobby but soon realise that Donnie has gone into the hell door. In the spy room, Tom and Molly try to reason with Rock, but it ends in them just pissing him off and he punches a hole in the wall. Greg also barely reacts to his son's death and is suspected to be a psychopath and basically gone crazy at this point. And of course, Gwendolyn and Fuchs are celebrating. In the hell room, there is a set of spring riders and they are in the shape of a heart, a devil, a brain and a Venus flytrap. There is also a swing set with a set of 2 swings. Bobby says to everyone that he won't go on the spring riders with Isaac, so Isaac and Sadie go on the swings and the others go on the spring riders. Bobby on the devil, CJ on the heart, Tonya on the brain, and Donnie on the Venus flytrap. Everyone on the spring riders starts to move forwards and backwards until an axe flies out from behind them. Bobby and CJ get off the spring riders and tell Donnie to stop, but he doesn't listen. He keeps going back and forth until another axe flies out from behind them and hits the back of Bobby's spring rider. Donnie still doesn't stop, and another axe hits the back of CJ's spring rider. Tonya hasn't gotten off yet either, but they make it to the next room anyway. But before they do, Bobby takes the hunting knife from CJ. On the swings, Isaac and Sadie are swinging back and forth and trying to get momentum so that they can jump to the opposite platform. There is a gap between them and the platform, and in the gap there is a giant drop. So basically, if they don't jump to the platform, they will die. To make things worse, the sand underneath them has gone and been replaced by fire. The bottom of their seats is starting to melt, so they have to be quick. Isaac decides to be brave and jump for it. Isaac makes it, and so does Sadie. They head off into the next room to see the other children in there. The next room is monkey bars, and if you fall, you will fall into a giant pit. So deep you will break your legs and maybe die. But also in the pit, it's filled with broken glass and snakes, which I feel is kind of excessive, you know. Bobby is the strongest, so he's preparing to go first, but CJ says about helping the others. Bobby basically says, fuck them kids, and he's about to go on the monkey bars, but Molly comes on the PA system and tells everyone that the bars are lubricated, so if you try and grab them, you'll fall in the pit and die. Hearing Molly's voice obviously makes Isaac and Sadie emotional, but now the small children have the advantage, and Bobby needs CJ's help because he's a fatty loser and can't grab onto the bars because he's fatty. In the spy room, Gwendolyn is pissed that no children died to the monkey bars, and she thinks Rock told Molly and Tom, which, spoiler alert, he did. Greg is still going crazy, by the way. Gwendolyn looks at Tonya on the monitor and thinks about all the things that she can do with Tonya if she survives the playground. This thought excites her so much that she fingers herself to the thought of it.
What the hell?
The next challenge is probably the most iconic. I mean, for Christ's sake, Aaron Beauregard made it the cover of the book, but the book describes the ladders of the saw blade slides as being longer. Before the children can decide what to do, the pit filled with snakes and glass starts to rise up from behind them, so the children quickly get on the ladders. Isaac is on the top of one of the ladders, and underneath him is Sadie, followed by Bobby. On the other ladder next to him is Tonya, Donnie, and CJ. Isaac finds out that if you go on the slide, as soon as the saw blades go up, they are timed, then you won't get shredded. He finds this out by weighing down his shoe and pushing it down the slide. Isaac then builds up his courage and goes for it. Luckily he makes it, and so does Donnie. Donnie walks up to Isaac and passes him his shoe. He obviously doesn't say anything, but I still think it's pretty nice. Tonya also makes it, followed by CJ. Isaac looks up at Sadie, and she is terrified and shaking. She has also peed herself out of fear. Isaac tells Sadie to slide down, but as he says this, Greg comes on the PA and tells Bobby that it's Isaac's fault the kid is dead. He also tells Bobby that if he kills Sadie, he will be proud. Bobby then pulls out the hangman's hunting knife and repeatedly stabs Sadie in the back. He then pushes her forward and puts one foot on her neck and the other foot on her butt. He then uses her still breathing body and rides her down the slide like a skateboard. She then goes face first into the saw blade. Her body is teared apart in a bloody mess. Bobby then catches up to the others and Isaac rushes towards him, ready to kill. But Bobby pulls out the hunting knife and points at Isaac and tells him if he tries anything, he will have the same fate as Sadie, that being dead. Before they go to the elevator on the next floor, Tonya and CJ start arguing with Bobby. Shocked by what he's done, he tells them basically that
No one understands. I am alone, and you made me like this. You made me.
Molly is screaming her lungs out, and Tom is devastated. They have just watched both their daughters die in some of the most horrific ways possible, and even Rock feels hurt after years of watching other people's kids be killed in the playground traps. And most importantly, he cares about what happens to Donnie. Gwendolyn is not happy like with the other kids' deaths, but Fuchs is still the same. The next room is a long hallway leading to a merry-go-round, and underneath that merry-go-round is a whole bunch of acid. CJ jokingly says to Tonya that he's sorry they couldn't go on the seesaw, and Tonya's all like, I'm never going on a piece of playground equipment ever again. All the children walk up to the merry-go-round as the air starts to damage their lungs. Donnie, CJ and Tonya are on one side of the merry-go-round, and Bobby and Isaac are on the other side. The merry-go-round starts to lower, and now if anyone lets go, they will fall into the acid. The merry-go-round goes faster and faster. And this kind of reminds me of a rib boat ride I went on recently, and before I went on it, I was like, oh wow, a pretty fast boat. I can see some sights and it'll be pretty cool. But like for 40% of the ride, the wind was the only thing I could hear, and I had to close my eyes, and it just sounded like this. But the important part of this story is that for like 10 minutes, we went on the highest speed the boat could go on the waves, so we were repeatedly going up and down, and the only thing saving us from falling into the fucking ocean was our life jackets and a metal bar you had to hold on to because there wasn't any seatbelt, so if you let go, you would fall off the boat. And this moment kind of reminded me like of Isaac, because he's now holding on for dear life, or he'd fall into acid. Speaking of, Isaac starts to feel his grip getting looser. Isaac screams for help, and CJ asks Bobby to help him, and Bobby goes, oh, I'll help him alright, and pulls out the hunting knife. But before he's about to strike, Tom comes on the PA and tells Bobby he's about to kill his dad, and if Bobby kills Isaac, then he'll fucking kill Bobby as well. Greg then yells, he's bullshitting your son, and Bobby stabs into Isaac's finger, just missing the bone. Isaac knows what he has to do and grabs onto Bobby, causing them both to fall into the acid, their skin slowly melting away until they are nothing but slowly disintegrating pieces of skin. All the Grimley children are dead. Tom and Molly don't have any emotions anymore. They are empty. Rock can feel the sadness in the air, and Greg doesn't give a shit that Bobby has just disintegrated. The remaining children get off the merry-go-round and slowly walk to the next room. Tonya is coughing and nearly passing out, and the next room is actually a seesaw. CJ and Tonya decide to go on the seesaw while Donnie sits down at the side of the room. The seesaw seats have a panel at the back to rest your back. As soon as they sit on the seats, a metal hook comes out from the back of the seat and stabs them in the armpit so they can't escape until a counter on one of the walls reaches 10 and they get 1 point by going as high as they can. But there are metal fan blades above them, and if they get too high, they will be shredded into little meaty chunks. Also, the hooks under their armpits will dig deeper into them with each point. When they get to 5 points, a fire starts under their legs. The power of the fire is that of a flamethrower, but they keep trying and getting more points, and with each point, the more the flamethrower burns the hairs off their legs, and at some point, it starts to burn the skin off their legs, and at 9 points, CJ passes out. After all the pain from the cuts on the slide and the salt in his wounds, he has finally had enough of the pain. It's all on Tonya now, and it's to the point where the hooks are so deep now in her body that it's hitting her rib bones. When she goes upwards to get the last point, CJ is pushed downward and he can't use his feet to stop him from falling into the flame. With the 10 points completed, Tonya is thrusted down and CJ is pulled upward and killed by the fan blade. It lands multiple blows on his head before his whole body is flung at the wall. The shock of this sends the seesaw onto the ground. Tonya hits the flame, but before it does fatal damage, Donnie gets Tonya away from the flame and they head into the final room. The final room is a tall room with a pillar with spikes on it, but most importantly, there is a sand pit with wooden letter blocks. Tonya lays down on the sand pit and Donnie uses the wooden blocks in the sand pit to say to Tonya that he will do the challenge. Tonya asks why won't he just talk to her. Donnie then spells out that he can't and then reveals that his tongue has been cut out. Just then, Rock comes on the PA system and tells all the children that he will come and get them out of there. In the spy room, Rock is about to release Molly and Tom, but Grendel and Fuchs come in to stop him. Grendel tells Rock how much of a disappointment he is. Fuchs is holding a revolver, but Rock charges straight forward and gets shot in the bicep in the process, but he doesn't let that stop him. He grabs Fuchs, making him drop his revolver, and smashes his head onto the control panel, releasing Tom, Molly, and Greg in the process. Fuchs' face slowly melts away and his eyes look like runny eggs, but then Gwendolyn shoots Rock multiple times in the stomach until the revolver is empty, but that doesn't stop her from repeatedly pulling the trigger. When Gwendolyn runs out the spy room, Tom and Molly get up and think of what to do next. As they do, Greg starts to fight Tom. Molly tries to help, but Greg punches her to the ground. Luckily, Rock helps Tom and repeatedly punches Greg. Rock then grabs Greg's nose and snaps it off, and repeatedly punches Greg in the face until his fist is through Greg's face. Molly helps ease Rock's pain, but he is still bleeding. Rock looks at Tom and Molly and tells them that he's going after Gwendolyn, and that they need to wait here until he comes back. Rock goes into Gwendolyn's room and sees a gun that he used to think about shooting himself with is missing, and the door to the mirror room filled with dildos is slightly peeked open. Gwendolyn is hiding in a small closet in the Hall of Mirrors. She can hear Rock coming down the hallway and takes a shot. The bullet goes past Rock and hits another mirror. Rock punches another mirror to confuse Gwendolyn, who is actively insulting Rock. Rock finds Gwendolyn and she tries to be nice to Rock, but he sees right through it and throws her through 2 mirrors. Her face is filled with glass and bloody. Rock picks her up and throws her through another mirror. She tries to speak, but all that comes out is blood. The blood in the back of her throat connects with the crusty cum at the tip of the dildo as Rock slams her head through one of the toys. After throwing her through another mirror, Gwendolyn's face is cut up, bloody, and filled with glass. Rock sees a piece of glass sticking upward on the floor and grabs Gwendolyn by her old crusty panties and throws her towards it. The piece of glass goes up her vagina and snaps halfway through, killing her. Rock goes back to the spy room in his weakened state and takes Tom and Molly to the elevator to the last room of the playground. Rock uses a key he has to get to the children, and Tonya asks them where her mum and dad is, and Molly has to tell her the devastating news. The weight of the day finally catches up with Tonya, and she breaks down crying. Everyone goes up some stairs leading to the playground they first started at. Rock uses his key to turn off the electric fences and open the gate. Rock looks at Donnie, then at Molly, and tells the others to go on without him. Molly refuses, but Rock tells her that it's what he wants. He also wants them to take care of Donnie and let him have the life that he never had. The others leave as Rock goes to the playground, the good one from the beginning, and starts to play. He has fun, and for the first time in forever, Rock starts to smile and giggle. After all the abuse and torment from Gwendolyn, Rock is finally happy, and he goes on the merry-go-round and slowly spins around as his pulse fades away. He then dies, ending the book. That was Aaron Beauregard's Playground, and I don't know if it's because I spent fucking months thinking about this book, but I don't think it's too bad. No horror masterpiece, but yeah, it's still good. And originally, with the Gwendolyn stuff, I stopped reading for like 3 weeks, and then I was like, well, I bought a book to disturb me, and it did exactly that. But there were so many other moments that disturbed me, like Samantha screaming for her mum and her dad, and crying, and all the fucking stuff that disturbed me. But that was just, I get why he did it. Like, when you search this book, everyone's talking about how they can't get past 30 pages of it. But I don't know. Like, I get it disturbed some people, but me personally, there were so many other moments that disturbed me without using all that stuff. The things I liked about it was probably how I went from liking Bobby to absolutely hating him, and I also kind of love the detail Aaron Beauregard puts into his books, and he makes good and interesting characters. But do I think this could be a movie? No. Firstly, because of the subject matter, and secondly, because you would need some fucking amazing acting, especially amazing child acting, like under 10, and that would be really difficult to get. Also, I don't think you would get a huge budget for a movie like this. And I know what you're thinking. Well, Josh, aka Mr. Crocs and Socks, how do you think it should have ended? Well, dear viewer, I'm glad you asked. I think we should have seen Tom driving Molly, Donnie, and Tonya to the hospital, and then I think Tom should have said to everyone, that just happened, and the car will drive off a cliff, but everyone survives, but a zombie-looking Gwendolyn will come out from behind Tom, and Tom goes, she's right behind me, isn't she? And then the book ends on a cliffhanger. That's how I think it should have ended. Some believe it was Michael Jackson who said, I want to be a Mr. Peanut Butter, but I need to be a BoJack Horseman. But would you believe it was me who said that? That relates to the video slightly, I swear. But if you want more horror stuff, you should check out a film called Antlers. It's got great practical effects and child death and amazing child acting as well. And if you want something to distract you from the disturbing stuff because you've had enough, I can't blame you, then you should check out Betsy_OneLove ASMR on TikTok because I think she's a really nice lady. And also All Around Grandma on YouTube. She is a really, really nice, kind woman, and I love watching her videos. They are very good, and they're very wholesome, and they will distract you from the horrible stuff that you've just heard. Also, check out Morphomorphs. I don't know if I'm saying your name right, sorry. But they did an amazing, detailed video on Playground as well. And they also were really nice. We had a nice little conversation. I'll put it on the screen. Check out them. They did really, really detailed video on it. Okay, so I had a really nice speech recorded, but then I leaned back in my chair midway through and it sounded like I fucking farted. So I just wanted to say, for 7 months, I've been trying to make a name for myself on YouTube. And those videos aren't good, but my point is, video after video after video, I finally feel like I'm getting somewhere. And I just wanted to say thank you to all the people who commented nice things and even criticism as well. And the people who have subscribed and those who were patient with me and waited for this video. And thank you for those who watched it. I genuinely really appreciate it. Also, thanks to Aaron Beauregard. Love him or hate him. I know a lot of you hate him. I wouldn't be making this video without him, without his book. And on that note, I'm not going to be a disturbing book guy. I'll make one more video by picking out 3 books from the comments, then putting them in a community poll. And the book I'm throwing in the ring is Wet Market by, of course, Aaron Beauregard. But I'm not going to always make disturbing book videos. I'll make whatever. So thanks for those who stick around for that. And on that note, I'm going to read this.